ballroom shimmered beneath the golden glow of chandeliers, their crystals scattering light across polished marble floors like a cascade of stars. The orchestra played a gentle, lilting waltz that carried through the air, filling the hall with an elegance befitting the city's wealthiest elite. Women in gowns of silk and satin floated like blossoms across the dance floor, their partners in black suits leading them with precise, rehearsed grace. Laughter and conversation swirled around the music, a display of privilege and power that only a few could ever step into. At the edge of the grand spectacle, where shadows met light, stood Eliza, the young janitor. Her uniform was simple, a pale blouse tucked into a plain skirt, her hands still faintly smelling of the polish she'd used to make the floors shine earlier that morning. She had paused her work, her mop leaning against the wall, as her eyes followed the couples twirling with perfect rhythm. There was a quiet yearning in her gaze, though she kept it hidden, the kind of longing only someone who'd never been allowed in the center of such brilliance would know. Alexander Hale, the CEO whose empire funded this very celebration, stood at the center of it all, his presence as commanding as his fortune. Tall, immaculately dressed, his every move exuded arrogance, as if the entire ballroom existed only to orbit him. He noticed Eliza watching the dancers, her stillness almost too bold for someone in her position. A smirk curled across his lips. He walked toward her, his polished shoes echoing against the marble. The guests nearby turned their heads, curious to see why a man of his stature would approach someone so insignificant. When he finally reached her, he lowered his voice, though just enough for those around him to hear. "You admire the dance?" he asked, his tone mocking, more a statement than a question. Eliza met his gaze without flinching, her brown eyes calm but steady. "It's beautiful," she answered simply, her voice carrying a softness that somehow cut through the music. Alexander chuckled, but it was not kind. With a flourish, he extended his hand, his grin sharp and daring. "Then dance. If you can manage this waltz," he said, each word dripping with sarcasm. "I'll marry you." The surrounding guests burst into laughter, some covering their mouths, others whispering as though the proposal itself were a cruel joke meant to entertain. Eliza's heart thudded once in her chest, but her expression remained composed. She looked at his hand, so sure, so certain that she would refuse, that she would falter under the weight of the ridicule surrounding her. Instead, she slowly wiped her palms against her skirt, straightened her shoulders, and placed her hand into his. The ballroom fell into a hush. The laughter faded into silence as eyes widened in surprise. Alexander's smirk grew, but somewhere in the depths of his eyes flickered the faintest trace of unease. The violin swelled, and the room held its breath as Alexander placed his hand firmly at Eliza's waist. He had expected her to stumble at the first step, to bow her head in embarrassment while the audience laughed. Instead, when the music shifted into its rhythm, she moved with him, not behind, not faltering, but as if the dance had always been a part of her. Her feet glided across the marble, every step measured, every turn smooth, her balance flawless. She was not dressed in satin nor adorned with jewels, yet she carried herself with the elegance of a woman who belonged to the dance floor more than anyone else in the room. Gasps spread through the crowd like ripples on water. They had come to witness her humiliation, but now they were watching something altogether different. Alexander's confidence wavered. He had been raised in ballrooms, trained in private schools where dance was just another part of power and performance. Yet as the dance unfolded, he realized he was not leading her. He was keeping up. Her movements were instinctive, each twirl controlled, each glide timed to the music with unshakable precision. When their eyes met, he saw no fear in hers, only calm strength and a quiet challenge that unsettled him. The orchestra built toward a crescendo, violins ringing with urgency. Eliza spun under his arm, her plain skirt flaring as though it were silk. The crowd gasped louder this time, a few even clapping mid-dance. Alexander's breath caught. The weight of the ballroom's attention was no longer on him, but on her. The janitor, the nobody, had stolen the stage from the CEO. Whispers filled the edges of the room. Where did she learn to dance like that? "She's magnificent." Alexander underestimated her. For the first time in years, Alexander felt his chest tighten, not with pride, but with something far more vulnerable. Admiration, awe, even fear that the careful image he'd built of himself was unraveling in the span of a few waltz steps. Then the music soared into its final notes. Eliza twirled once more, her movements flawless, before landing effortlessly in his arms. The precision was so perfect, so breathtaking, that the room erupted into thunderous applause. Guests rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some even shouting her name, though few had ever spoken it before. Alexander held her there, frozen, his hand still resting against her back, his chest heaving. He stared down at her, his once mocking eyes softened, almost vulnerable. "Who are you?" he whispered, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Eliza looked at him, her expression serene, a faint smile gracing her lips. "Just the janitor," she said quietly, though her gaze carried a fire that no diamond or fortune could ever outshine. She stepped back gracefully, leaving him standing alone in the center of the ballroom, still holding the echo of her presence in his arms. The applause thundered on, but Alexander heard only the silence between them, a silence that told him the world he thought he ruled had just changed forever.